Welcome to episode 3 of Musical Genius or Twat. This is the third one I'm doing now. The first one was Bono from U2. The next one was Sting from the Police and from his own solo career. And episode 3 is going to be on Prince, right? Now, normally on these, I have a bit at the beginning where I have sort of a bit of a biography, but I'm not doing that on this one. I've decided to leap straight in with just the talk and try and go through his history as part of the talk. Now, that's partly because I'm a massive Prince fan, so I'm pretty sure in this case I can go without any research. I can hopefully just leap straight into this one with what I know, because I actually decided to do this one on the car on the way over. So obviously that gives the game away. I wouldn't know so much about Prince if I wasn't a huge fan, but I don't know everything. So there might be a few cases in this video where I do lose my way, but let's just get in. This one's going to be a very rambly one because I've got a lot to say on Prince, and that's why I want to do more talking. And I've got some very strong opinions about Prince as well. And some of them are positive and some of them are negative. So from the outset, I think, obviously, the genius thing is there. That he is an extremely talented person. He is probably warrants the term musical genius as much, if not more, than Bono and Sting. But in terms of his catalogue, it might not be that he has been able to hit such a quality level. Now, the reason for this is because he's just put so much stuff out over the years. And he also seemed to have a very lapsadaisical, approach to releasing stuff. A bit like me, I churn out video after video after video, and I don't care about it. I do it, and then I go home, and I do the next one, I go home. And I admire that in Prince, He's not the Blue Nile. Remember the Blue Nile? They made that one album that was amazing in the 1980s, and I think they brought another one out that was really good. But they don't. They were definitely had their control on quality. Very 80s thing that is. Anyway, so I think there's a mismatch of quality with Prince. There's also the fact that, like Sting, he's a pop star, but he's in that small category that Sting's in. He's an out-and-out pop star. See, Bono's not really a pop star. He's more of a rock star or celebrity. But Prince was a pop star. But he was a pop star who had had immense musical talent. And actually, believe it or not, they're few and far between. To be born with that sort of charisma, that sort of performing abilities, and then to have that sort of musical abilities. I'm not on about natural music talents like Michael Jackson, because sing brilliant, he's got a great feel for music, which Michael Jackson had. Prince was something else. He could play all masses of different instruments and play them really well. He knew his harmony, he knew his theory, he knew how to write songs, he was a lyricist, he was an incredible singer, and an incredible performer, and an incredible dancer. He was a full package. So when he signed to a record label in 1978 and brought his first album, For You, out, this was really like the record company to sign him up as the next Stevie Wonder, right? But a Stevie Wonder who could see, so they could jump around and dance, and he emerged. And when he emerged, when you look at those early performances on video and early photographs, he also has, for the 1980s, something which was very important for the pop stars then. He has an almost androgynous look. Very good-looking man, a beautiful man, but a small man. Long, wavy black hair, a small frame. He's both feminine and the opposite to feminine, masculine, right from the outset. But the first album is just basically a display of his abilities. Incredible sort of post-Stevie Wonder funk. He's playing all the instruments. Then he hits the 1980s, and he does something that is really, really important in music history at that point. He was a fan of Sly and the Family Stone, Parliament Funkadelic, and I think those two artists really influenced him. Now, the whole P-Funk thing was moving at the end of the 70s into the 80s into this electro-funk thing. If you think of Zap, who else would it be? Trouble Funk, Cameo. So the 80s are coming in, the drum machines are coming in, you know, all the new romantics are coming out with their sort of, you know, an electronica, electro bands. They're coming out with their, you know, very sort of post-Kraftwerk type of stuff. The drum machine has gone into disco through Giorgio Moroder. People are realising that people can dance to a drum machine. But that sort of funky P-Funk sound, it is then sculpted into this sort of electro-funk sound. Go and check out Zap if you want to see it done absolutely brilliantly. But the genius of this is Prince. Because Prince brings in the songwriting, and then he takes his androgynous image and he sexualizes it, okay? And he brings out two albums that are very, very good albums, Dirty Mind and Controversy. And so he moves from just being a prodigy at this point to being a pop star, an underground pop star and a dangerous pop star. He's walking around with the little black pants and the stockings and suspenders. And Dirty Mind is... It's almost like a prog album. It's like an electro-funk prog album because it's a concept album. Prince has definitely overblown prog ambitions on his albums, let's say. But it's coming from P-Funk more than it's coming from, you know, Genesis or anything. But I'd love to know how much he took from those bands because they're so proggy. He has this idea of the epic. He's got a big vision. But on Dirty Mind and Controversy, which are both concept albums, Dirty Mind is about sex. That's the concept that runs through that one. And Controversy is about sort of newspapers and, you know, that whole sort of controversy thing. And these are brilliant. If you take sex and controversy and put it together, that's the machine that drives Prince forward into superstardom, right? Then I think he brings out 1999. I hope I don't have to try and do that because there's so many Prince albums. I'm going to get stuck at some point. But I think it's 1999. That's a great album. And then 1999, he starts to write proper hit records, right? And they start to hit the charts and they start to have a huge influence on popular music. He starts to change the sound of the 80s, you know. If you think of Phil Collins coming in 1980 with Face Value, Phil Collins, right, think about it. He's been in a prog band. He's a British musician. He then writes this sort of poppy prog album, Face Value, and he has a huge hit with In the Air Tonight. And In the Air Tonight has this sort of, it has this very 80s sound to it. There's no machines on it, but he's done it through effects and it's really blocked down. He's got that little Lin drum all the way through, right? A couple of years later, he's copying wholesale Prince. Sussudio is wholesale Prince ripoff. Now, everyone hates Sussudio. I absolutely love it. I think it's a brilliant track. And I love this early Prince. Prince's ambitions are not fulfilled with this, though. He is now a pop star. He's having hit records. And with the fame and fortune, he decides to make a film. And at this point, he should have failed and gone away because he takes millions and millions of pounds and he makes an absolutely sort of megalomaniac, narcissistic film, which is basically about him and him being very cool, riding around on a motorbike, chasing Apollonia, who's very, very beautiful and sexy, and wooing her and being an outsider and doing all that stuff. And I think it's an absolutely awful film, a terrible film. But the music runs through it. He produces a soundtrack album that becomes one of the biggest selling albums of the 1980s, Purple Rain. He's now in the same bracket as Madonna and Michael Jackson in terms of the early to mid 80s. Purple Rain is just stock full of hits. It's also, kids are buying it because it's a pop album. And it has the track Darling Nikki, which has that sort of sexual content that he was exploring before. So kids are buying this album. You know, the whole censorship thing comes out of that, mainly out of sort of rock bands like Judas Priest, where people thought they were, you know, driving people to kill themselves, and Prince, Darling Nikki, because there was loads of kids 10 years old buying this album because they've heard Let's Go Crazy or whatever it is, Purple Rain on the radio. And they've gone and bought this album, and now they're listening to a song about some woman doing naughty things in the hotel lobby. So I can't even say what she was doing in the hotel lobby. I can't say it. So Purple Rain is huge. Now, I have to say, the sort of hard electro funk of Controversy and Dirty Mind, I love. 99 I don't like so much because it's real pop, and he can write a pop song. Prince writes pop songs like this, he just throws them away. It's like, oh, I don't want that. I don't want that one, Shaka. Do you want it? And he gives one to Shaka Khan. I feel for you. You know, what about Sinead O'Connor? You could have one, and she has a number one. Or, you know, but how about Manic Mondays? You could have that, Bangles, and they have a, you know, he's like a proper genius. I'm just, as you know, not so keen on sort of poppy songs. You know, I like the funk, I like groove, you know, I'm not so keen. But Purple Rain, if I was doing a ranking, would have to be in the top 10. But for me, my likes, Purple Rain wouldn't get in the top 10. There's 10 albums I love way more than Purple Rain, for me personally. And the reason I say this, because it doesn't matter, but the reason I say this is because I'm there in the 80s. I'm exactly the right age. I'm ignoring Prince, right? And so I'm part, as a kid going to school, of this other lot, which is like, do you like Prince? No, I hate him. I hate him. Why? Well, he's just little, isn't he? Now, this is the thing that nobody is going to discuss on a channel, on a video, exploring Prince and his genius. Before he died, and this is why I'm doing the video, this is why we're here doing this. Before we died, Prince was disliked by the vast mass of the populace, except for the Prince fans. He properly was Marmite, to use a British expression. So if you don't know, look it up, you know. If you loved him, you loved him. But if you didn't like him, you really didn't like him. And I really didn't like it. So I know what the feeling is. I was only a kid when I didn't like him. But I can remember what that was like. I remember what people said about him. He sang in a really high, whiny voice. He was effeminate. And he was little. He was small. He was tiny. That's his problem. He was tiny, like Arthur Askey. He was like the Arthur Askey of soul, 5'2". That's how tall Arthur Askey was. I don't know the height of Prince, but I know the height of Arthur Askey. That's the kind of guy I am, you know. So you imagine, you know, that was the sort of people I was into at the age of 50s. It was Arthur Askey, Tommy Trinder, you know, Old Mother Riley. You know, I'm British. They were my heroes, you know, not some guy that was indistinct in every single way. You know, and the other thing with Prince is also racially, you know, Michael Jackson, realizing that he wasn't going to be able to become a global superstar because he was black in the 1970s, he beat MTV and he got his videos on there, but he had to move towards being a white person. But with Prince, he could flip between the two. The androgynousness went even further out. And I think for normal people, it's a bit weird. Now I'm old, I go, wow, this is incredible. Pop star, like this is when we had proper pop stars that properly challenged, you know. I mean, I suppose we have Sam Smith, don't we? We have him now, don't we? You know, Prince has died. Have you got anybody to replace him? We got Sam Smith here. Do I try him out? No, I don't think so. Right, so Purple Rain comes out. It's massive. I mean, massive. So now he's got even more power. And part of his power is going to be spent wasting his times making films like Graffiti Bridge and Under a Cherry Moon, which aren't successful because they're rubbish, right? And I think partly because he follows up Purple Rain with Around the World in a Day. And suddenly, this thing he has, it opens out. Now, I never bought that album, so because I wasn't a Prince fan, I didn't buy that album and I ignored it. But there's a change on there. He starts to bring in the psychedelic. He starts to bring in the trippy. He starts to look at the arrangements. You can see the influences of like Duke Ellington coming in. You can see that compositional and prog influences, the Beatles. This is all coming in on this album. And I missed out on all this. But what was really interesting is 85, 86, you start to have the rumblings in the 1980s that people were going to return back to some of the values of the 70s, right? In rock music, I can remember The Cult, who was like an indie band, suddenly made an album that sounded like AC/DC. right? Dance music started to come in, things started to get funkier, things started to get tighter. There was a certain move that was going to go on, you know, and the 70s went from being the most uncoolest decade. By the time he got to 1990, it was the coolest decade. And Prince, being a product of that, he starts to channel that on these albums. I'm still ignoring him. He then brings out Parade. And I can remember, I'm sat there, how old, when's Parade coming? Is that 1987? So I would have been 19 at that point, right? Don't like Prince, he's too little, too whiny, don't get him, you know. I like jazz, rock, fusion, prog, and heavy metal. That's what I like. Don't like Prince, don't like Prince. I loved Shaka Khan at that point, but didn't like Prince. And this video comes on the TV, and it's the video for Girls and Boys. And this thing starts up, and my ears, what he's doing on that for a pop song, it just floored me. All right? This incredible groove, this cyclical groove. And within the groove is these little finger cymbals, right? Little finger cymbals clicking. The soundscape was so different to anything you heard in soul or R&B. It seemed to have a little bit of sort of Kate Bush about it, but it was funkier and groovier. It had elements of all sorts of different styles. And the riff is being played on a baritone sax. And I thought, that's a weird instrument to have, a baritone sax. And the baritone sax is hard, you know, and you're getting this... It's like James Brown, but it's a completely new sound, right? And then he comes on with his high voice like Curtis Mayfield. Yes, boys. You know, I can just remember it now, everything about it, and I'm floored. I'm thinking, oh my God. And then it gets to the middle section. And the middle section sounds like modern classical music. It's like sweep, insane arrangements of harmony and chords. This baritone sax then comes on and takes this like weird jazz solo. And I'm listening to this and going, is this a pop song? How has Prince done this? Who's arranged this? You know, because you've got to understand, Prince does it. You know, there's other artists that have these creative ideas, and maybe they can write a chord chart down, but they pass it to arrangers. Prince is doing everything. There's chords over chords, polychords. It's just bonk. I mean, people go on about Steely Dan. You lot go on about Steely Dan and how great they are. Listen to the middle section on Girls and Boys, and you got to understand, Prince is doing this stuff absolutely all the time. The arrangement, the musical quality, the depth, the compositional brilliance, right? If you think that Dirty Mind and Controversy, they're the blueprint of sort of electro funk. And then you have 1999 and Purple Rain. Now we have the albums that turn him into an absolute superstar. And then you have Around the World in a Day. And then he goes into what I think is an absolutely sublime period. Right, most albums from the 80s, I can't really listen to them, even when they're genius albums, unless they're like a rock album, like Guns N' Roses. I could listen to that, you know. Eliminator by ZZ Top. I could never get tired of that. But in terms of pop music, all the gated reverbs and DX7s, I can't stand. Now, Prince is using those. It's not like he's gone back. But on this run of albums, I would say would be Around the World in a Day, Parade, and then his Tales from Topographic Oceans, which is greater than Tales from Topographic Oceans, which is Sign of the Times, which had a concert film. So that concert film is incredible because although it's got a few little bits of plotting, you know, and his sort of West Side Story thing going on all the time, it's one of the greatest concert films. If you go and watch Prince performing It's Going to Be a Beautiful Night, when I lectured on performance, I used that to define platonic genius performance on stage. Go and watch it. Prince doing it, you know, It's Going to Be a Beautiful Night. Sheila E. is on drums, and at one point she jumps off and she walks down to the stage. She's got one trouser leg missing and she looks magnificent. She just looks unbelievable. Prince runs around, drums on the kit. He starts to come into the drums. He plays a solo, and Sheila E. raps, right? Prince was famously anti-rap at this point, but there's rap going on. And Sheila E.'s rapping at that point is just incredible. Sign of the Times is absolutely incredible. And I can remember when they brought the soundtrack of the title track of Sign of the Times out, and that came straight to #1 in the UK. And my God, Prince, He was dealing with everything. This was political, it was soulful, it was minimal. You know, you remember Kiss coming out? These are like the greatest songs ever made, right? Sign of the Times, Parade, Around the World with a Day. And then he follows that up with a bit of faffing, if I remember right, because he then made an album that he decided, this is what happens, I think, to Prince, is that his vision's so great, he starts to overreach himself a little bit with the films, and also with the next album. He makes this album that he decides is too negative, and he pulls it in. And this is the Black Album. I have the Black Album. I bought it at the time on a bootleg. It's genius. Cindy C is incredible. Dead on It, where he criticises rap, incredible. But you could see, at this point, he's going into this sort of street punk, Miles Davis-y, pimpy sort of funkiness at this point. And that's what the Black Album is. But I would put it in the masterpiece, even though it doesn't exist, it never came out. And instead he reconvenes himself a little bit and he comes out with Love Sexy. Love Sexy is a work of genius. Alphabet Street, just listen to the arrangement on it. It's, you know, dance on. It's like the Mahavishnu combined with James Brown. These are all genius albums. I felt at this point Sting was doing the normal thing. He was going into the studio, making a genius album. Now, this guy is massively productive. So what you were getting, he's making masses of records, you know, masses of songs. I'm sure if you go into the Prince vaults, you will find literally, you know, thousands of songs that he made. And they were basically culling those down. So every track's a genius track, you know, and incredible. Soulful songs, ballads, you know, and all this type of stuff. After Love Sexy and the Black Album, there is a diminishment of quality. Now, what happens at this point is Sting realises he's in a record deal. And the record deal wants him to do certain things. And he now wants ultimate creative freedom. Now, somebody in the industry once said to me, when this was happening, they said, Prince is trying to take on the record companies because he thinks he's big enough to do so, and he's had the shock to find out he's not big enough. All right? So, no artist is bigger than the music industry. It could be that that's not the case now. That could be a whole video there, actually. But back then, you know, George Michael tried to take him on, failed. Prince tries to take him on, fails. So Prince gets into this situation because he can't do what he wants to do. A, he wants to get out of his contract, and B, he wants to make a statement. So he realised the name Prince is the thing, so he stops using the name Prince, comes up with a symbol. The media call him the artist formerly known as Prince, you know, which then is the butt of so many jokes at that time, and still to this day, that can be used in a joke format. He writes Slave on his face, and he starts to make albums that are almost like getting on the record company's nerves to get out of his contract. But before then, we have Diamonds and Pearls, we have The Gold Experience, we have the Symbol album, and these albums are really, really great. In terms of my personal listening, Gold, those three albums I love as much as the other albums, but it's because Prince is doing his thing and it's all a bit mad, it's very funky. He brings tracks out like Sexy MF, which stands for Sexy Mother. I'll do that again, Sexy Mother, right? You know, I'm not going to say that word on my channel. And that comes out as the single, and there's a video with it. And so he's all going all over the place. He writes songs like, you know, could this be the most beautiful girl in the world? You know, and around this period, he brings out an album which people say is one of his worst albums, which is called Come. Is another sort of sex-based conceptual album. But on this, he explores a deep jazz vibe, and it's one of my favourite. That's what I'm saying. I'd have the album Come over Purple Rain any day of the week. I love these albums. So this is a really good run of albums up until the mid-90s. He wants to get out of his contract, so he brings out a triple album called Emancipation. Up until this point, I'm now a massive Prince fan. Every album that comes out, I buy. The next album comes out, I buy, right? I might have missed a few out, but I'm sorry about that. Emancipation comes out, and I put it on, and it sounds like filler. It sounds like he has just gone into the studio and banged out. I can't even remember any of the tracks on it. There's so many. And even if it had been an amazing album, a triple album, right? Unless it's like a story like Lord of the Rings or something. For me, personally, Emancipation was a massive slip-up. He eventually gets out of his contract, and then he starts to bring out a whole bunch of albums. He brings out a rock album that I think is really good, which is, I think it's called Dominance. I can't remember the name of that album. It's a good rock album, but it was brought out deliberately to upset the label and Prince fans, you know. I stopped following at this point. He sort of threw his career away at that point. You know, at some point he brought an album out for free and it came out in the front of a newspaper at some point. But the thing is, he goes from being one of those artists that is writing not just hit records, but culturally significant records. That's beyond the hit record, okay? And so if you were to put Manic Mondays in there, or I Feel For You, or Nothing Compares to You, or if you were to put Let's Go Crazy, or When Doves Cry, or Little Red Corvette, or Purple Rain, or 1999, or Kiss, or Mountains, right? Listen to Mountains, right? Mountains, actually listen to the middle section of Mountains if you want to really hear full-on prog, modern classical madness, right? It's in Girls and Boys, but it's subtle in those horn arrangements and all the harmonies that are going on in there. But listen to Mountains. Listen to Parade. Parade's a concept album. Parade's a masterpiece. He does things like he'll be playing one track, and then when one track comes to the end, this percussion that's going on, it just carries on going, blink, ding, 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 and then it slows down, ding, 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 and then it settles into a new groove, and then just churns into the next track, right? Sign of the Times, Alphabet Streets, When Two Are in Love, Grand Slam. There's a period where he's just coming out with brilliant song after brilliant song. He's undeniably a genius, right? But I think there's something about Prince which I am now, on the second half of this video, because I've done the history there, and that's the way the history is going to go, straight up. Not like any of the other ones. And I think I've done an all right job. But you're missing out all the stuff he did at the end. You know, what about this album? What about that? I can't even remember the titles. I totally lost interest. I did check those albums out, but it just seemed like Emancipation over and over again. They have you could hear it on Gold and Diamonds and Pearls. There's a certain filler quality coming in at this point. I can't explain what it is. Well, let's put it this way. Prince had an incredible vision for popular music, and he pulled it off. He was a film star. He was an incredible singer. He could sing up in ridiculous high, and he sings in ridiculously low. He's a phenomenal singer. One of the greatest pop vocal performances ever is his vocal on Could It Be the Most Beautiful Girl in the World, which he sings relatively high. But there's one point where he breaks and he goes right up high, and he's going, could it be the most beautiful? And he's up there. At the same time, he splits and he goes low, and he has a counterpoint going, could it be the... And these two things just run like bloody bark through this, you know, actually quite middle-of-the-road pop song, which is absolutely beautiful. You know, absolutely beautiful tune. As a singer, he's one of the greatest of all times. Right, now, I'm going to deal with his guitar playing. His funk guitar playing is incredible, right? For a pop star that plays guitar, he's great. Really great guitarist. You could tell there's a lot of Hendrix there. There's also a lot of Carlos Santana. But this is my issue with his guitar playing. This is where I'm going to be critical of him. So this is the first criticism coming in. I'm not a massive fan of his guitar playing. As a production guitarist, he's very good. He'll drop things in that are really cool and they fit in the songs. But this idea that the greatest guitar solo of all time is Prince playing My Guitar Gently Weeps, right? It's an incredible performance. He's an incredibly charismatic guy. Jimi Hendrix, he is not, but he's trying to do it. And he almost pulls it off. But on guitar, he is really just coming out of sort of that blues-based way of playing. Now, people think I don't like that playing because I don't like Dave Gilmour. And I do like Dave Gilmour. I mean, I do. I just don't really like Dave Gilmour. I think he's overrated. But At the moment, I've got ZZ Top in the car, and I'm listening to it because I'm about to do a video on them. Billy Gibbons, I absolutely love. Billy Gibbons is one of the greatest guitarists of all time. Prince is not Billy Gibbons. And also, when he starts playing those weird plastic-looking guitars with the big curly bits on, and I had a student who had one of those guitars, and it was absolutely horrible. He was a massive Prince fan. He bought it, and the tone was horrible, and it never stayed in tune. And that's what it sounds. These guitars never sound in tune. I hate Prince's guitar sound when he's soloing. Great guitarists have to work a lifetime on their tone. They really do. I'll give you an example of that. Steve Vai. If you listen to Steve Vai in the Zappa band, he's doing incredible stuff, but when you listen to his overdriven guitar sound on You Are What You Is, that sort of period, or Tinseltown Rebellion, that period, it sounds like a wasp in the jar. By the time he gets to Stevie Spanking, he's changed it somehow. Guitarists have to work on their tone. I don't know whether Prince had the time to really nail his tone. You know, I play a lot of the guitar, and I've never been able to get a guitar tone that's mine. You know, I've never owned a proper guitar amp in my life because I've never gigged, you know. Prince has got a lot on his plate, you know, so his guitar playing's great. His bass playing, though, is unbelievable. Right, listen to the bass lines on Alphabet Street. I think there's 3 bass parts on that. Counterpoint slap bass lines, and he's slapping, but it's not repetitive. He's weaving around, and it's all part of the arrangement. His drumming is so cool. Keyboard playing, his arrangement skills, everything, percussion, is really phenomenal. I'm going back to gushing over him. My point here is his sense of vision is so great, and he pulls so much off through the 80s that this can't carry on. And when he starts to get to the end of that, rather than winding it in and realising he's done his thing, he tries to overreach himself. And in overreaching himself, he slams up against the record label, and he goes from being someone creating the highest quality popular music in the 1980s to someone who's just churning stuff out. And he ruins his reputation for me at that point. He's still phenomenal live. He's still able to do these incredible shows, and his live shows are unbelievable. Here's some more good. This is the idea that what Sting is. Sting is, Prince is. I'm getting confused with Sting because Sting's an incredible talent. This is the thing. These are few and far between. Prince is the same. On the Love Sexy tour, there's one point where he comes out with Kat the dancer, and they start playing basketball. And they both throw the ball across the stage, and they go through the hoop. Think about it. Think about doing a show where you drive on stage in a Cadillac, that every little bit is choreographed. You've got people coming up through trapdoors. The music's incredibly hard. He's cueing stuff. It's like Frank Zappa is improvising. The most insane. I think it's the greatest live show that anybody ever did. It's like what Ike and Tina Turner did. It's that, but 80s technology on a vast level. It's just incredible. And at some point, in the middle of singing and dancing, doing guitar solos, you're going to play a game of basketball, and you're going to pat, 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 throw it, it's going to go in, and then your dancer's going to do the same, and she's going to knock it in. The balls to pull that off, right? That's the thing about Prince. His vision's incredible. He is sort of, in the end, I think, he's sort of doomed by his immense talent. All the stories about what Prince is like is all very weird, isn't it? You know, I think Dave Chappelle's comedy skits about Prince are absolute genius, and you need to go and check them out. With Eddie Murphy's late brother sort of describing interactions with Prince, which you feel are based upon the truth, you know, and very, very funny. He sort of has, you know, Paisley Park. He's turned into an industry. I always felt like he didn't live in a house. He lived in some sort of massive factory, like Willy Wonka's factory. He's like the soul rhythm and blues pop version of Willy Wonka, and you can't get inside that factory. But once you're in there, there's all these things going on, and I just don't know what's there. It'll be like absolutely incredible. And there's so much power there. There's so much vision there that I think he's quite a private guy as well. I've read interviews. I remember reading an interview with Terry Bozzio, and he said he was in a rehearsal studio and Prince turned up. Prince was very quiet, very shy. He had a massive alter ego, but a very fragile inner being, I think. Very, very shy. And I think the thing we have to deal with is the guy dies of a drug overdose relatively young. I don't think he's a junkie. It was painkillers. He was suffering with pain back then. But what obviously happened is a similar thing that happened to Michael Jackson. Both of them went the same way, didn't they? It's very interesting at the same time. It was just the amount of totalitarian autocratic power that they developed around them, that nobody could tell them anything. And being then like a sort of Randolph Hearst, Citizen Kane, boxed off in your little mansion, unable to really understand what reality was, to be able to connect with what was out there. Prince had really been able to take his experience with his immensely talented father, but difficult father, and he had a difficult upbringing, and he was able to package that up and put it into the film Purple Range. There was a trauma there. There's a fragility there that is, when he got it right, was so compelling. But we have to see that half of Prince's career, he was really subpar, right? When you check out the interviews with him, he is a very sharp guy. He has an idea of what he's doing, but I don't think he was a nutter. I don't think he'd gone all sort of what's the name of the guy? You're not Randolph Hearst. The Aviator guy, Martin Scorsese's film was about the great producer that I can't remember his name, that seemed to go all sort of off his. I'm not saying Prince was like that. What's the name of that bloke? Well, it's not David O. Selznick, is it? That doesn't sound right. They always have to have a moment in my videos where you just watch me trying to remember something. It's a feature now. If I don't do it, you'll be upset, won't you? And that's what happens when you get old. The sharpness starts to go. You can't quite do what you did before. You got back problems. You can't write the hit records. There's a record by Rush, a song by Rush on the record Signals, and it's called Losing It. When I bought Signals in 1982, I was 14 years old, and I read that with great wisdom, going, oh yeah, that's what it must be like, And Neil Peart, he's really old, isn't he? Now, Neil Peart at that point, he's born around about 52, I'd say. Neil Peart, 51, 52. So he was coming up to 30 years old at that point, and he's writing a song called Losing It. And there's me at like 14 years old going, yeah, Neil Peart's 30 years old. Must be rubbish getting to 30, mustn't it? And feeling like you haven't got your skills anymore. Bloody hell, skills I had when I was 30. That was a long time ago for me. That's nearly 30 years ago for me, 27 years ago. Yeah, and I sit there, now I look back on that and I thought Neil Peart was very accurate to get that, because that is there, and that must be so there for the pop star. And the greater the height you reach, the greater the fall. And maybe Prince negotiated that relatively well, but he did end up dying at the age of, when was it, 56 or something like that, about my age, I think, 57. So he's obviously not a twat, right? But there is something of I don't know, there's something about Prince. When I looked at Sting's on tour at the moment, brought an album out a few years ago. All his albums are great. He's doing what he's doing. Prince has ended up being a bit of a doom character. So musical genius, but a doom character. And maybe that is a sign of real genius. But the reason why I've done this video is anybody that was around in the old days going, I don't like Prince. He sings too high and he's too little, which really was what everyone said. It's changed since he's died. But it really was what everyone says. And I still think there is an aspect of Prince that still gets on people's nerves, right? And this is the overwhelming theme of this series. So I've done 3 now. And I've done 3. Did you notice that bit then? 3. I've done 3 now. And the conclusion I'm coming to is that people don't like talent and success. They like their pop stars to be more touchable. They like their pop stars to be more down to earth. That's what they really like, is somebody like that, And like Adele. Adele's the perfect pop star. Ed Sheeran's the perfect pop star. Talented, but not Prince. Down to earth, you feel like you could have them around the house, they'd be all right, polite and nice, crack a few jokes. That's what people like, and they like to see them doing good. And Adele was once a bit chubby, wasn't she? She's not now because she's got loads of money, so she can afford to get people to come around her house and force her up the gym and tell them, to knock that thing out of her hand. When she's got a Mars bar, they go, "Oh, Adele," and they knock it out of her hand, and then they put her in and take her down the gym. She does all that. She pays them to it. A bit like Kato in the Pink Panther, when Inspector Clouseau says to Kato, "I want you to attack me when I'm not ready, and I want you to attack me, and if I say no and fight back, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I say, you're still going to fight me." And then he's cursed by this. Well, I think Adele's got somebody like that, but it's a fitness trainer to keep her on the straight and narrow. And so regular, normal people can look at them, especially ladies, women. They can look at her and go, "Oh, isn't she one? She was once a bit chubby, And she was a bit of a wallflower, she was. But look at her now; she looks absolutely wonderful. Nobody wants the most beautiful, talented, jumping and kicking it. This is the whole thing about modern culture. So that's episode 3 done, I think. That was an easy one for Prince. I wanted to get that one out of the way. I really need to have a think now, because my problem is I come on this channel, I start ranting about people. I enjoy a good rant and you enjoy a good rant, but I got to be honest, if I get into something seriously, even Van Morrison, if I was to really go into Van Morrison or Mick Hucknall's catalogue, me being actually in real life a sort of quite open and nice person, I am really, I am. I'm telling you it now. I'm telling you I'm a nice person. I don't need to virtual signal because I'll just tell you out straight. When I look at if I went into their catalogues and really looked in depth, I'd probably seen the good in what they do. Maybe even Bruce Springsteen. So I really need to go the next one. Now you put it in the suggestions. I've got a plan, but I've gone off the plan now. So. If you watched it to the end, so I know who the true viewers are, the true proper Andy Edwards fans are, so I know who you are. If you could put it in the comments. Now, here's a few options I've thought. Another proper genius that gets maligned all the time is Phil Collins. Again, a massive musical genius, incredible. I'd like to do Phil Collins and just look at his solo career, right? That's one I'd like to do, because songs like Against the Odds are bloody masterpieces of songwriting. You have to be that's as good as Elton John or Sting or Joni Mitchell or whatever you want to pick on. Against the Odds is incredible, but it's pop, you see, but it's incredibly deep and well done pop. But there's some obvious knobs that we could be looking at. So proper twats. Ted Nugent, that's one of the ones on the list. Kanye West is another one. I mean, God, I saw a photograph of him walking around with his swastika t-shirt on. But the trouble with Kanye West is, because I'm a bit of a contrarian, every time he does this, I'm like, you got to give it to him. You've got to give it. He's walking around with a bloody swastika on. And then on top of this, he's a black guy. Right, that's the best bit of it. And it's gone way beyond, there's a certain point where the identitarian left, being trolled by Kanye, would have gone, yeah, but he is black, and he's probably a genius, really, and we're just going to understand. And there's at a certain point where he's trolling at that level, but then he keeps going, and then where's the limit? What is he going to do? Because the identitarian left have let go of him ages ago now, right? He really is off on it. He is like the Mozart of trolling. Kanye West starts a billionaire rapper that they all said was a genius. Now, is he a genius? I've got to listen to those albums. See, I'm doing the video now. Kanye's definitely one. I won't do that now. See how good that one could be. Shall I do that one, Kanye West? Who else is a right twat? And the thing is that when I looked at Bono, he's never really said anything or done anything that makes him a twat. Yeah, he's the only thing I could come up with. I found out afterwards. He has got a profile on the World Economic Forum, and when I found that, I thought, bloody hell. That's not good. Sting's a lovely guy, without a doubt. Anybody who can be part of some nobody's joke on YouTube that's at that level of superstardom is a good bloke in mine. Ted Nugent could well be. Ike Turner, that's one, because Ike Turner is so important in the history of rock and roll, but of course he is close to being Satan. Phil Spector, that would be another one that'd be interesting. Ones that got a brilliant musical reputation, but in their real life has done stuff bad. But also, What about Charles Manson? I mean, he had a music career, didn't he? Old Charles did. Right? And I'm very interested in Charles Manson, so I've read up about it. And I'm not saying he was a good lad, but why did he go to prison for life? Could anybody tell me why that was? Because even if you're an accessory to murder, you don't go to prison for life. So why did they put him in prison for life? Because I cannot work out why Manson was put in prison for life. I can't work it out. These are the things I want to get into. But his connection with the music industry, I need to do some research because I'm very interested in that. And it would be nice to have a video that actually pulls it all together and works out what he was doing with the Beach Boys. And wasn't he involved with Doris Day's son at some point? Is that right? There's so much stuff. Right, I've padded at the end to get up to 45 minutes. Couple more adverts, a bit more money. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. That was episode 3 of Musical Genius or Twat. And the answer is he was a doomed musical genius in the end, upended by his immense talents. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.